Welcome back to Stitt Happens, the podcast where we have forward thinking conversations about energy, the environment, and the way we live. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn. If you're thinking about building a home in Northwest Arkansas right now, you are probably staring at a lot of big numbers: interest rates, lumber prices, land costs. But there's one number most people ignore until it's too late: the monthly utility bill. We are living in a new reality, with utility companies proposing double digit rate hikes and storm seasons getting more intense. The old way of building houses, stick frame, fiberglass insulation, and 100% grid reliance, well, that's becoming a financial liability. Today, I'm sitting down with David Stitt to talk about the Stitt home. We're going to explain why an energy efficient home isn't just about saving the planet, it's about saving your wallet. We'll break down the math of the monthly bill, explain why batteries are the new must have appliance, and show you why the sun in the Ozarks is more powerful than you think. David, welcome back to the show.
Great to be here. Good to see you again. Excited about our conversation today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, this is definitely an exciting episode because we kind of get into the nuances of what it takes to actually build an energy efficient home, and so one of the things we want to do is kind of lay the foundation for our audience and give them a little bit of the new economic reality, if you will. And so one of the issues that comes up is, you've got the volatility of utility rates. There were recent a SWEPCO proposal for a 27% residential base rate increase as a prime example of why homeowners really need to insulate themselves from rising costs. And we talked about it in the last episode of the podcast, but we really want to kind of get into it today and just just have some conversation around this. So, in the last episode you mentioned that sticking with the status quo puts homeowners at the end of the rope with things like SWEPCO and others. Can you explain why building a standard code minimum house is essentially signing a blank check to the utility company for the next 30 years?
Hmm. Yeah, that's like it could be a conversation, the whole podcast right there.
Right.
I think the first thing that you said, and we talk about this a lot, is the word code built. Code, from a construction standpoint, is what we say is the minimum allowed by law, meaning you have to hit this minimum standard if you're going to participate. And code officials inspect footings and they inspect electrical work and maybe a heating and air system, but they don't ever inspect for insulation or energy efficiency. And so code is a minimum allowed by law. We use an analogy around here that says it's like getting D's in school. It's enough to get to the next grade, but it's not excelling. And I don't know many of us that would look at our children and say, hey, just get D's. Let's just get D's in school. That'll be good enough. You'll get by.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's really what most homes in America are built to, a code, and that's again pretty low standard. So when you and it's there's an element of consumer protection here, because when you buy a new home, just like you buy a new car, the expectation is it's new. It's going to perform at a very high level.
Hmm.
But because of gaps in the building process, because of um, frankly, is like heating and air systems and water heating, and just the energy envelope that we'll talk about gets more and more involved. The need to do it well is even greater. But it's a more complicated situation. And most builders are builders because they love creating things, or maybe their dad or grandfather was a builder, but it's become high tech now. And so, coming full circle, so many people are building or buying new homes with the expectation that it's going to be state of the art. But in many cases, the practices that we use to build homes cause them to have high utility bills. They're not the best practices. So you're right. You're not only spending a lot for the lot, spending a lot of money for the lot. You're spending a lot for the contractor, for the countertops, the cabinets, the appliances, et cetera. But when you move in, the expectation is that you should have a reasonable utility bill. And many new homes have several $100, two, three, four, five, $600 utility bills, and the customer can't believe that they bought a brand new home and they have a utility bill that is that high.
Yeah. And it's so funny as you're talking about that. I have really terrible memories actually of a old drafty home that I used to own in Boston, Massachusetts. It was over 100 years old, and so there is you would think that there would be a dichotomy there in terms of the energy efficiency of an older home versus the newer homes. But some of the newer homes are as big a drag on your energy bill as a home that is 100 plus years old.
Yeah.
And you would think that with the new technology and with the way things are built, that we could easily avoid it. But it takes a little bit of intentionality, which is what I think Stitt brings to the table. When you do sit down with a builder and decide, hey, this is how we want our home, and these are the kind of additions that we want to have to our home, so that it will have a long energy usefulness, from that perspective. And that's not always the case.
No, you know, real quick story. It was in about 2010. My father and I went to a conference, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design Lead, called Green Build. It was in Chicago.
Hmm.
President of the United States was a guest speaker, keynote speaker. And the basic premise of the theme of the whole conference was every home in America is needing a energy retrofit. And so the number that came out was 130 million homes need an energy retrofit. And the conversation continued, and people were saying, yeah, but I got a brand new home. And to your exact point, it's new homes, it's old homes. So I think most of the attendees came home and thought, hey, we're gonna grow our business with all these retrofits. And so we did too. We started going out and testing homes, and we had this great plan. We're going to do a really comprehensive test, and we were going to solve people's problems and show them how to reduce their energy bills. And almost overwhelmingly, I don't know that we ever did one. We did a ton of audits. And we would go back to the customer and we'd say, for $46,000, for example, we can fix your insulation and your heating and air system, and we'll get your utility bills down. And it's a good investment because the additional cost for that, maybe you did as a line of credit or however you financed it, you're actually going to save more energy than the payment. But there was an element of denial.
Hmm.
People would look at me and go, but David, you don't understand. I have a brand new home. We've only lived here 6 months. I said, but you called me because you have a $400 utility bill. Yes, but I have a brand new home. I don't need to spend another 50 to fix my house. So kind of coming full circle, the value of doing it right the first time is much, much more economical than going and fixing it later. Because to do it right on the first time is single thousands. To go in and retrofit it after the fact is $46,000 in this example. So yeah, it's a big gap. And I say there's an element of consumer protection there because the customer and the banker and the appraiser don't necessarily know what that utility bill is going to be unless they go through a constant comprehensive program like we do.
Yeah. Well, and I think about that. In a former life, I dabbled a little bit in real estate sales, actually for more than a decade. But I always, as a real estate agent, I always looked to leverage every major accretive value that can be brought to the real estate transaction, right? And so, I mean, when you think about saving, thousands of dollars per year on your energy bills, that is a value in and of itself, right?
Mhm.
And that's a benefit of having a well-built home. Now, granted, as you have shared in the past, some people have sticker shock when it comes to looking at these homes and what it entails for them to build something that's truly energy efficient. But I think today we want to really get into why the amount of lift that's required in order to make that happen is worth it in the long run. And
Yeah.
one of the ways that we can do that is kind of just talking about the monthly bill. And I think it's important to have these conversations. That's why this podcast that happens is such an important conversation. It's not, we're not selling anything. We are sharing information. We are giving people the data that they may not necessarily have to make an informed decision. So let's kind of start by breaking it down and let's talk about the monthly bill. Most people only look at the mortgage payment when budgeting. How do you help clients calculate the true cost of ownership, mortgage plus energy, to show them that a Stitt home might actually pay or put cash back in their pocket every month?
Yeah. And it's a function. It starts with the bank and the appraiser because the bank says we will loan a percentage of the appraised value. Well, if all the homes in your neighborhood that were code built homes like we talked about are valued at such and such a price, you're kind of capped at what you can pay for the house. But again, to your point, they're not saying, yeah, but what's the energy bill? Um, there used to be loan programs out there that would take into fact in the energy bills into account, but they didn't do very well because it was kind of like a salmon swimming upstream. It just they hit the dam and it was over. So yes, it's principal, what you pay for the house, interest on the loan, taxes that you're going to pay, and then energy, PITIE, principal, interest, taxes, insurance. I forgot insurance and energy. Energy is the one that gets left off. And because everyone assumes that it's just paid by the customer and all energy bills are the same, et cetera. So we actually did a study. We did to the best of our ability, tried to compare two exact homes and said, here's what this one costs at this interest rate over the life of the mortgage, and here's another one, same home. But we said you're going to spend a little more on some insulation. You're gonna get a higher efficiency heating and air system, et cetera. And you actually save money at the end of the equation. And this was several years ago. And with energy prices being higher, the savings are more dramatic. But for every dollar you save in energy, you can afford more house because you
Yeah.
do get a mortgage deduction and you can put that house. It's better to invest in your home than a utility bill that you get nothing for, which this will lead into the conversation about solar batteries. But there's also an interesting piece to this that when you build energy efficiency and you get the value in the house and you get a lower energy bill, there's some other little byproducts that are arguably as important in some cases, more attractive to the customer. And one of them is durability.
Hmm.
A really well-built home that does not have lots of air and water leaks, I'm saying water from rain, moisture from outside, is more durable. There's less mold, there's less mildew, there's less rot and decay. It's just a better and more durable home. You don't have as much maintenance. Health. When you don't have air leaking in from a nasty, moldy crawl space or from a part of the house that got damp and wet and there's a lot of air leaks and you've got air passing through walls, the indoor air quality is much higher. There's much less dust. And then I think the last one that is fascinating to me, and people don't believe this until they live it, is there's truly an inverse relationship between your utility bill and your comfort.
Hmm.
If people call us and go, man, I got a $400 utility bill, I need your help. They generally say, Susie's bedroom's too hot, the master bedroom's too cold, the kitchen's always somewhere in between. And they run around and they hit the thermostat as they're running around the house because the house is so uncomfortable. So high energy bills lead to low comfort. And then the inverse happens when you have a really low utility bill, you're extremely comfortable in the house. And so energy efficiency can reduce energy bills, which save you money, gives you better value, it's durability, it's health, it's wellness. And it's contagious. And we like to say that we sell a future benefit because a lot of things we talk about, people don't fully appreciate until they get that first utility bill
Yeah.
or they go up in the bonus room on the 4th of August, it's 104 degrees outside, and they go, well, we've been up here playing all day. The kids are having a great time because the bonus room is cool because they're notoriously too hot. So it's super interesting. It's almost a psychological experiment.
Yeah. And you guys have been doing this for a long time, almost half a century. That's like 50 years for those that don't do public math. And that's a long time in the sense that you've seen a little bit of everything, right? Even at the early stages of the energy renewal movement for building houses a certain way. But I'd love for you just to kind of break down, and you've already alluded to it, the building and science health aspect of the work that you do. One of the things I know for a fact that you do, and we talked about this offline, was that you build with insulated concrete forms, or as they call it, ICF. Now, for the layperson, I would love for you to kind of talk about what is it, and why does living inside a concrete core home feel different during, say, for instance, a humid Arkansas summer compared to a standard stick framed house that we see all over the area here in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah. The premise and the basis of all this is building science, and it's understanding moisture, heat transfer, how these different things make you feel either warmer or cooler. My dad used to say, "Isn't it crazy? We do all this work, all this building science to try to keep people between 68 and 72 degrees. It's their comfort level. And there's a lot of work that gets done to keep people comfortable from a temperature standpoint, but also healthy from a moisture standpoint. So um, generally speaking, I like to say every house is different. What people's budgets are, their style, even security. Concrete homes are certainly, from a resilient standpoint, they're the best of the best. They do cost a little more.
Yeah.
Then we have some other options that we have worked with. There are programs in other parts of the country where resilience for hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes. Um, we've researched that, and we're bringing some of those programs to our business so that we can take a home that's a little more standard in nature from a structure standpoint and make it stronger so that
Yeah.
it is more resilient. So insulated concrete forms are an amazing piece of the puzzle. And the reason they're relevant, and just again to maybe take a half a step back, an insulated concrete form is simply two pieces of styrofoam, expanded polystyrene, with concrete in the middle. And we like to insulate the concrete because concrete's a conductor of hot and cold. It's
Hmm.
kind of like steel as a conductor. If you put steel out in the street in the middle of summer, it's going to get really hot. You can't even touch it. So we need an insulator around the steel in this case to keep it cool or warm, depending on the season. So concrete's a conductor of hot and cold. And so by insulating it, we eliminate some of the heat or cold issues that happen in a house. And then from there, we integrate other products that essentially are building a cooler, like an ice box that you live in. And by doing that, we make sure that you're comfortable all 4 seasons of the year.
Hmm.
So insulated concrete forms are such an integral part of the science of it.
Yeah. I'd be curious to know, and this was something that we didn't necessarily talk about before we actually did this recording, but um, you know, your area where your company is based up, you're up in the Rogers, Arkansas area there, which is like Bentonville, Rogers, Springdale, Fayetteville. So for those that are the uninitiated of the main cities in Northwest Arkansas, but in May of 2024 there was a major tornado that came through the area. I'd be curious to know, just off the top, were there any Stitt built or Stitt designed homes with the ICF that maybe fared better than others?
We don't know of any, but we do know of um, wildfires in California, hurricanes on the Gulf Coast, that other folks that are building similarly to us, their homes fared much better.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have a resilience package. It's if you said, "Hey, I'm going to buy let's say a car," you could upgrade to get some other things that make the car nicer. We have some basics that we won't negotiate on as far as the quality of the energy and energy savings. But one of the things that we have with metal strapping and some adhesives and some various other um, kind of I guess strategies is the right word I'm looking for. Some different strategies where we tie the whole house, the roof, the walls, the foundation together. So it makes the house much stronger.
Hmm.
And there was actually a report that it came out today that talks about resilience in housing. And globally, the United States had more insurance claims than any
Yeah.
country on earth. And so the insurance companies now are saying, hey, the rate or the policy holder has to have a little more skin in this game. We'll still write them a policy, but they've got to provide better quality housing, things that don't blow away or burn.
Yeah. And that brings up a good point because I think, I know my insurance bill went up for my house, home insurance. And so, they one of the first things they asked is what safety items do you have in your home that make it more secure? And I think a lot of what you're describing are some of the benefits that you get or derive from a well-built home like what you've been describing. Another thing that you talk about is that we live in a high allergen area here in the Ozarks, and I know a lot of people have this fear that is that tight, energy efficient houses don't breathe properly, right? Can you kind of explain how your ERV ventilation system actually makes the indoor air cleaner than the air outside? Because that I still can't wrap my head around that, but I know you
Yeah.
can explain it better than I could.
Yeah, talk about the health benefits. It's an energy thing because when we get the envelope or what we call the envelope, the four walls of this cooler we kind of refer to, we have to have fresh air in the building. The occupants have to have fresh air, and people when they breathe they give off CO2. And so if you have a whole bunch of people in a house and it's not breathing or getting fresh air into it, you could potentially have a health problem. Now, the old time builder said houses have to breathe. You alluded to it perfectly. And that is uncontrolled breathing is called air leakage
Yeah.
that leads to high utility bills. So that is something we hear all the time. And the builders are fearful of, well, but what about moisture? What about other things that might cause allergens, mold, mildew, you name it, that get stuck in the house that cause people to get ill? So an air exchange or an energy recovery ventilator is a way of bringing fresh air from outside, bring it into the house, and at the same rate, a totally balanced rate, the air that's come in is, while it's coming in, there's an equal amount of air leaving the building. So it's balanced, meaning we're not putting a positive or negative pressure on the building. And there's reasons that we don't want to do that. So it's truly balanced airflow. And the reason that the air exchanger is unique, the energy recovery ventilator, is if it's, let's say it's August and you're bringing in 100-degree air with 80% humidity,
Mhm.
you want to take and transfer the temperature and the humidity of the air that's leaving and put it in the air that's coming in. And that's important because we don't want to dump hot, humid air into the house. That causes other problems. So an air exchanger is truly filtering the air when it comes in. It's capturing the temperature and the humidity of the air that's leaving and putting it in the air that's coming in. So now we can have fresh air in the house. There's another aspect of this that's super interesting, and that there's a study done years ago in Japan. And what they started to find out is that when CO2 levels get to a certain point, particularly at night, people don't sleep as well. They get headaches, they wake up, they toss and turn. And so, air exchangers, by having a certain amount of fresh air, and we actually calculate it, we'll say how many bedrooms are in the house, and we set the air exchanger to run and get a certain number of CFM so that when you do go to sleep, you have an adequate amount of fresh air in the building for, the people that are in there sleeping. Otherwise, there could be other health benefit or health problems that the air exchanger solves.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's when you think of it, it's like there's so much engineering and technical aspects that go into how these homes are built, right? So that it's not that it's over engineered, but it's engineered to such a high degree that you guys have to take so many different calculations into consideration. The number of people in a home, the size of the home, the number of rooms, all of that plays a role in how you build a home that is basically energy efficient. And I know that, as I sit here and listen to you talk about it, I know that there are other countries outside of the United States where this has been a practice for a much longer time. And we've seen the examples of what energy efficient housing looks like. And those countries and those individuals in those countries are benefiting from houses that are just built more efficiently.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, all the way back to the beginning of what's code, we got to look beyond code. The and it's an education thing. In our last episode, we talked about understanding your electric bill.
Yeah.
Now you got to understand this is again your energy bill or where you're spending your money, but educating not only the homeowners about what they're buying, but all the trades that are building in the homes, sizing, excuse me, sizing for heating and air systems, water heaters, it all, excuse me, all the trades have to understand what are the implications of putting a heating and air system in a better quality, well-built home because they don't need as much heating and air. And right back to the beginning where we started, the economics, if we can put one heating and air system in a house instead of two or three, not only do you save on the equipment, but you save on the utility bills and the maintenance down the road. So if we come all the way full circle to where you started and ask the question about the economics of this house that we're talking about, becomes very favorable in durability and energy efficiency and what you pay per month to utility company.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think that it's important to kind of share these stories with people because I know that I would imagine that the average consumer that comes to you has a myriad of questions that you need to answer. And I'm sure you probably feel like sometimes I sound like a broken record because I say the same things over and over again. But I mean, how do you allay the concerns and or fears that somebody has that this is unheralded science that doesn't necessarily pay off in the long run?
Hmm. Yeah, that's actually one of the most fun parts of it. And so we do several things. One is we do a construction open house. We actually take our clients, people that are interested in learning or maybe building a house. We take a house that's under construction before there's any insulation in the walls, and we put signs all over the inside of it so the customers can walk through. And it's amazing. Like I always joke that everyone walks construction sites, but it's usually Sunday afternoon with a flashlight or something because they want to look in their neighbor's house that's being built, but they don't want to get caught, so to speak. So we open it up and we say, "Come on, let's look at this house. We'll explain to you why this is different. What is our strategy? Why does this lead to a better investment?" So that's one thing. We give a lot of referrals and references. We say, hey, call these people. They'll walk you through their house. They'll tell you about their experience. And then we have a reference list, and it's probably 6 or 8 pages. There's probably 50 or 60 people. We say, call any one of them. Any one of
Yeah.
them. They'll tell you about their experience. They'll tell you, does it live up to what they expected? Are their energy bills low? Is their comfort high? And it's really compelling. And we've had a number of people that do. They call 4 or 5, people, and they go see their houses and really learn about it. And then I think the proof in the pudding is that we actually will guarantee the utility bills for 2 years after
Yeah.
the customer moves in. And it's because talk is cheap. So we say, we're not going to live in your house and we're not going to put stipulations on how many people live there and what you set your thermostat at. But back to our cooler analogy, the cooler stays comfortable if you're not losing a lot of energy to the outside. So most of us want to be pretty comfortable within a degree or two of each other. Maybe I wear a sweatshirt and someone else wears a t-shirt. But the whole point of it is that when we're comfortable and we guarantee utility bill for 2 years, we'll pay the difference if it doesn't live up to our expectations or your
Wow.
actually the customer expectations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure that that probably encourages some people to go with what you're offering. And I'm curious to know whether or not you have had any success from the engineering and design of these energy efficient homes, even on the low end, right? So, like, if there's a builder watching this that's, trying to build a lot of spec built homes on the low end or the entry level perspective, are there things that you can offer to that builder from a design perspective that can provide a level of energy efficiency that you would not normally find in those types of homes?
Yes. And you look at it a little bit different depending on the price point and who's the buyer, and there's a whole bunch of factors, but definitely the knowledge and the understanding of, again, the systems, the heat transfer. Where's it a good place to put the money? We've actually won a number of what are called energy value in housing, and the whole basis for energy value in housing awards is that you can't spend tons of money to just make it efficient. Like you can't take a poorly built home and put a bunch of solar and a bunch of batteries and make it efficient. You have to do it based on the economics.
Yeah.
And I always say and talk to people, I say we have out of necessity had to figure out how to build homes that ultimately become net zero energy homes. Most every home that we design and build out of the gate is either net zero ready, net zero energy ready, or is net zero. Well, we had to do that out of a pure sense of survival. We had to pay our employees and we had to pay for our, facilities and keep our business going. So we had to recreate and be creative to figure out how to build a better mousetrap, so to speak. So if the builder, the homeowner, whoever the customer is interested in setting aside all the things they maybe think they know or their preconceived ideas
Mm-hmm.
and kind of turn the page and say, I'm willing to start with a fresh perspective and learn. A lot of it's going to be the same. We're not trying to build spaceships here, but we are going to talk differently about the systems and how they go together. Then it's not rocket science, but it is absolutely all about execution and doing it well.
Yeah. And I want to define this for the listener because there may be somebody, a layperson that's hearing, they've heard net zero energy home or net zero energy efficient home. Can you just kind of quickly define that? And we will define that over and over again throughout this podcast series because I think it's important for people to have an understanding of what does actually net zero mean.
Yeah. And so taking a half a step back, kind of like miles per gallon on a car, there is what's called a home energy rating system. And a HERS rating is like miles per gallon for a car.
Hmm.
And we have every home that we design and build HERS rated. And just a side note, we're not necessarily the builder. So we're part of the team building the house, but we like to say the houses that we build. Every home that we build gets a HERS rating. And zero means that if a score of zero, and HERS ratings are like golf. So low scores are better, high scores are bad.
Yeah.
And so a score of zero means the home produces as much energy as it consumes.
Mm.
And to put this in perspective, 100 would be a code built home if there was such a thing. So that's like a D in school.
Yeah.
The average home in America is about 150 on that scale. Many old homes like the ones you're talking about in Boston, that was probably 2 or 250, and some homes would even go to 500.
Oh man.
So high homes on the high scale have no insulation, no air barrier, poor appliances, poor heating and cooling, etc. But to define, as you asked, net zero is getting to zero, meaning it's a great investment and it produces the same amount of energy that it consumes over the course of a year. And then you can actually go negative. You have homes that produce more energy than they need, and therefore you can fuel your vehicles or bank some kilowatt hours with the grid. But there's a really super website. It's under ResNet, resnet.org. And they have a HERS scale. It's an interactive scale. And as you click on the different numbers on their scale, it'll say, 100. Hey, this is a code built home. Um, 50, this is 50% better than a code built home. And then we get to 0. This is a great investment. You're going to mitigate long-term energy costs. You're going to have a healthier home, more comfortable, et cetera. So it's quantifying energy efficiency for the customer done by an independent third-party rater that tests the house. So it's not me saying it. I can say all this, but if it doesn't play out to you when you move into your house, it's not worth anything. So we're big in third-party verification. And that's not just for us. If you went to someone in Chicago or Miami or wherever you want, if you're watching this podcast, ask your builder for a third party rating on your home. There are raters all over the country, and they will give you verification that you got what you bargained for. And
Yeah.
they're highly trained, they're very analytical, and they look at the house in that way. And that's the whole basis for where net zero energy started.
Yeah. Now, and you mentioned for people outside of the natural state of Arkansas, if somebody reaches out to you from outside of the state, are you able to help them out or answer questions or give them additional guidance in terms of their journey to building or modifying energy efficient home?
We do. We've actually done projects in 18 states. And the business model is actually with technology, it's allowing us to reach out even further. And most people that come to us from outside of the area, they're readers, they're researchers, they're digging in, they're watching podcasts, they're doing all these things, trying to learn more about energy and energy efficiency. And they probably go to their local builder and he goes, I don't do it. That's too
Yeah.
expensive. And after two or three no's, they get on the internet and they start searching. And when they come to us and we say, yes, this is what we do, and we'll do the plans, we'll do the budgeting, we'll do solar, we'll do batteries, but we're not your builder. And let's say we got a project up near St. Louis right now.
Hmm.
We go back and we find a local builder to actually use our plans, our specifications, and our knowledge, and they build the house.
Yeah.
So we are really good at working remotely, and it's a decent part of our business.
Yeah. Well, and I think people need to hear that because that means that there is a considerable amount of hand holding that goes into this process and that you are willing to do that even from afar, based on the fact that I'm sure over the time that you've done projects in 18 different states that you've had a chance to build relationships in those states. So
Yeah,
now that if somebody comes to you from one of those states, and we'll be sure to list those states in the show notes, if somebody comes to you from one of those states, chances are that you already have a connection in that area that can probably help out.
probably,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah.
And because I'm all about analogies, and I think they're good for explaining things. To kind of put a bow on this, maybe I always like to say that we look at the builder. If we were going to bake a cake, this is my analogy. If we're going to bake a cake, we need a cook, but we need a recipe card and we need ingredients. So we're going to supply the recipe card, call it plans and specifications. We're going to help, guide the baking process, but the homeowner and the builder are cooking this cake. And so collaboratively, we come together and provide certain ingredients that are important. We're providing the recipe card, but the homeowner and the builder are baking this cake. And if they'll follow the recipe, the cake turns out really good and it tastes
Yeah.
really good. And I say it that way because the this cake we're baking, our piece is very small, but we want to make sure it's right. And this is, I like the way you started. How can we help other people? As long as people have an interest and a willingness to learn, we'll share all our secrets and all our knowledge, how we do things, because it's better for the customer, it's better for the builder, it's better for society.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you and I talked about that a little bit, how like a lot of times people they over index from an energy efficiency standpoint. When you said that the industry, that every house needs to be built like with ICF, but I know you've said kind of otherwise around that with regard to, structural insulated panels, that everyone does have a budget. And because of that, and they have to meet an appraisal that, there are a lot of different ways to skin that cat and come up with something that makes sense for that particular or individual homeowner.
Exactly. Exactly. I think when the tornado, speaking of tornadoes, when the tornado hit Joplin many years ago, we did a bunch of houses up there and they were all concrete to the roof. But I will
Yeah.
tell you, those people didn't do it because they wanted the most energy efficient home. They just survived an F5 tornado.
Yeah.
So I would say people have their own motivation, but most people, and if there's two people that come in looking for a house, generally speaking, there's one that's a spender, one's a saver, one's a creative, and one just wants to get it built. And so we have to appeal to both sides. And so the idea of blending floor plan and financial plan with a basic standard of performance is the recipe. And I think our team does a remarkably good job about listening to the customer and what's important. Because if we just said, we're going to build every home this way, and this is our standard, and you're going to neglect beautiful cabinets, or you're not going to get the fireplace that you wanted, we wouldn't build many homes.
Yeah.
So it's really about a personalization and a touch, so that the house is the customer's, but do it within their budget and not sacrificing on the performance of the home and what we call the energy envelope.
Yeah. I'm glad people are hearing that come out of your mouth, because then that may give them uh, cover to say, oh, well, this might actually be possible for me, whether they want to modify their home for energy efficiency, or if they've decided, what, for my last home, everybody has a dream home that they want to build that's going to be my forever home, that they can go into it with the knowledge that not only am I going to build a home that's going to outlast me, but it's also going to be super energy efficient, both for me and for whoever inherits it after me.
Yeah.
And I think that long term thinking can really pay off in the long run. So
Randy, just a real quick comment there, because we do get a lot of people that, this term forever home. I think there are people that come and they build that forever home, but there are also people that say, oh, I'm not going to build energy efficiency because I'm only going to be here 5 years. Well, our answer to that is talk about differentiation in the market. If you can build this home for a similar price, sometimes more, sometimes less, it will not be the energy efficiency that determines the final budget. What the customer spends on cabinets and countertops and swimming pools is far more impactful on the budget than what we do. But even if someone's going to be there 1 or 2 years and they're looking at two or three houses, and all of a sudden you can show them a HERS rating that shows what the performance of the house is and shows utility bills, and to your point, maybe a battery or solar, the competition's gone. They're going
yeah,
to buy that house because it's a better investment and it holds its value better.
yeah,
So
yeah.
so it's not for the only for the forever home, but it is also for the person that says, "Hey, I'm going to be here for 5 years."
Yeah. Oh, well, we call those value added benefits in the real estate environment. That's what those
Right.
are called. So, listen, I want to try to land this, but we got a couple of things I do want to bring up. I know recently there's been a shift in Arkansas law with Act 278 regarding net metering. It sounds super complicated, but it essentially means the utility pays us less for our extra power. Why does this make the Stitt Zero Plus package of solar plus batteries the smartest financial move for a new homeowner right now?
Hmm. First off, reducing your dependence on the grid is the number one, first, most important, lowest hanging fruit thing you can do. Just simply not being as dependent on them, particularly as winters seem to get colder and summers seem to get hotter. So just reducing your dependence is the first thing. The second thing is when you install solar, particularly on a well-built, super efficient home, you're going to buy less solar and you're going to buy a smaller battery because you just don't need it as much. But this idea that you cannot send the energy you produce on your building back across the meter at the same rate means you should hold on to it. Keep it. It's your
Yeah.
investment. You've determined that a battery and solar is a good thing for you. And so you store those electrons and you use them at night. The other thing that is happening, it's undeniable that time of use metering is coming. It will be here before we know it, and it will probably be as part of some of the rate negotiations that are happening currently. But when that happens, we as consumers and ratepayers are going to be charged a higher rate during peak period and a lower rate off peak. Well, that battery then allows us to charge battery off peak, discharge it at a lower rate during peak periods. So the economics are better now because of the grid of the structure with net metering that they're paying you only avoided cost, but
Yeah.
it's going to be even more favorable when we have time of use rates.
Yeah. Well, I mean that totally makes sense, again, sometimes even though laws can be enacted, there are other solutions to kind of circumvent some of the challenges that those laws present, just like what you described. Um, I know some people are probably thinking this and they're saying, "Well, Randy asked this question." Okay, so I'm going to ask it. We aren't in the Arizona desert, but you've been harnessing the sun here since 1978. I said that almost 50 years.
Yeah.
What do you say to the skeptic who thinks Northwest Arkansas is just a little too cloudy for a solar home to be their primary energy source? And I thought that
Hmm.
myself, but I would love for you to kind of allay the fears or concerns that somebody would have about maybe there's not enough sun in this area, right? Because we aren't Arizona.
So some people refer to the middle of the country, call it not the West Coast and not the East Coast, as the Wild West for solar.
Yeah.
Because you're right there, but we get on average about 5.5 sunlight hours per day. We get more in the summer and less in the winter, but on average about 5.5. To put that in perspective, Germany has the most solar per capita in the world, and they get about 2 to 2.5 hours of sunlight on average. So we have
Wow.
twice as much sun as Germany has. The other thing, but they've got very high energy rates. That's the difference. Is as our energy rates go up, the attractiveness of solar here will be even greater. But the deserts, lots of sunshine. But one of the things that degrades the production or makes solar a little less efficient is heat.
Hmm.
So we actually have a pretty favorable climate here because we do have uh, more than 5 sunlight hours per day on average, and we don't have the extreme heat temperatures, and we have lower utility rates. So as the utility rates rise, the quality of that investment is going to keep getting better. So
Yeah.
we are the kind of they like they say the Wild West of solar.
Well, and I was looking somewhere where we actually get a certain number. I guess I don't know how they measure it, but we get a certain number of sunlight days of sun in this area more than people would think, right? So I think that that is also a benefit that we have being here in Northwest Arkansas specifically. So
And with the price of solar coming down, price always enters into these equations and conversations, but
sure,
particularly as price places that have less sunlight hours, as the price comes down, it becomes more favorable. High altitudes of Colorado, where there's 300 plus days a year of almost perfectly clear sunshine with no atmosphere, are perfect. But there's not as many people that live up there.
yeah.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's the price, and we're in a great place for solar here.
Yeah. All right. So I want to mention this again in case somebody missed it earlier. So you offer again a 2-year energy guarantee backed by a third party. That's kind of unheard of in standard construction, right? So how does that guarantee work again, and what does it tell us about your confidence in energy modeling?
So the third party underwrites what the utility will be, and we go back to the HERS rating that we talked about a little earlier. And a HERS rating is going to take the house, the orientation, you know, is there solar, is there batteries, and it's going to quantify it through that energy modeling you talked about and say our projection is that this home's going to have a $26 utility bill.
Yeah.
And then the customer reports. It's funny that we find out that most customers don't report because they're at or below the guarantee, so they don't even submit their bills. But
Yeah,
if it's, let's say we say it's $26 and it's 50, we'll pay the difference.
sure.
And so that's good for 2 years. The math is so good and the modeling is so good. We have almost no heartburn. And even if we miss it by a little bit, we are so happy to pay that bill for someone.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't
Yep.
yet, but it is a testament to the quality and the execution that the homes go together. They're tested properly, and it's a consumer protection thing for the customer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's nice that you kind of put your money where your mouth is, and this is something that you guys have been putting into practice for a while, and it does make a difference. And there are always going to be people out there that need some additional assurances that this is actually going to work out for them. And so,
Yeah.
I want to end on this final thought. I know that there are people listening to this that may be thinking about building, or maybe they're already starting to work out the plans and everything. It's kind of never too late for them to talk to you and gain some insight. What would be the very first step that somebody should take with the Stitt Group to ensure they are maximizing their site's potential? Now they've heard this podcast and they're like, you know what? I really do want to make energy efficiency one of the hallmarks of what we're deciding, what we're building, what we're designing. Would be the first step that you would recommend that they would take with the Stick Group in order to ensure that they are building something that is truly energy efficient?
So one thing, my father has written a book called Holistically Green Living. It's a book that are 18 principles to designing and building an energy efficient home. That'd be one great thing to do is pick up that book, read it, study it, learn about it. We think that people have to understand and learn what we do and why we do it. And so that's the first thing, start to educate yourself. The second thing would be call our office and we do a complimentary site visit. We do not charge for it.
Mm-hmm.
We have some exceptions. If it's a long ways away, we'll do a lot of the site, site analysis electronically before we actually go to the site. But we can't pretend to tell people um, or have a conversation about what they want to build until we can see where they're going to build it. We need to understand what are their dreams? Why do they pick this site? What's important to them? Is it storm resilience? Is it energy efficiency? Is it solar? What are all the variables? And so we do that. It's very much a relationship building process. So we go through that process, and there will come a point where probably going to job sites, references, et cetera. Someone will determine if this is a good fit for them, and then we walk them through the process. And if they're not, hopefully we've given them some information that they can use with another builder that they work with, and maybe they come back and we talk to them about solar or battery at the end.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, David, I mean, who knew that energy efficient home building would be so fascinating? I mean, I'm saying that tongue in cheek because I've always been interested in this since the first house I went into that was a net zero home, and then meeting so many design professionals over the years that have designed their own home. And while I think that it's important that this information gets out there for the widest audience possible, because then people can make informed decisions about what's right for them when it comes to either retrofitting or designing a truly energy efficient home and the difference that it can make in the lives of those homeowners. So I want to thank you again, even for just putting Stit Happens together and doing this podcast, because you are really sharing almost a half a century of information, in an hour's episode that can make the difference for a homeowner. So thank you for doing that.
You bet. It's been a literal passion of our families. And these are homes that people live in for the rest of their lives, and it's a personal thing for us, and we love to see their success, and we're doing homes for second and I think even maybe one third generation of families now.
Oh,
So
wow. That's very
it's
cool.
those are good referrals when mom and dad refer their kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Well, folks, that was David Stitt, CEO of the Stitt Group and Stitt Solar. If you take one thing away from this conversation, I hope it's this: the sticker price of a home is not the same as the cost to own it. When you build efficiently, you are essentially prepaying for your energy at a fixed
Mhm.
cost for the next 30 years, rather than renting it from the utility company at a rate that goes up and up every single year. So, whether it's the comfort of ICF walls, the safety of a storm-proof structure, or the financial freedom of the monthly bill strategy, the Stitt Standard is about future proofing your life. So if you want to see if your land is ready for a Stitt home, please visit them at stittsolar.com. That's STITT solar.com. Check out their Solar South site evaluation. It's the best way to start. Thanks for listening to this episode of Stitt Happens. We'll see you next time with another new episode.